Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Movement, podcast brought to you by the South Carolina Education Association. I am Todd Scholl, and with me, as usual, is Albert Jones. Albert, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, enjoying the fall weather and the cooler temperatures.
Yes, it is finally cooler and crisper here in South Carolina. The humidity's out. It feels great. It's sweatshirt, sweater weather. Love it. Albert, what have you been up to in your world at the SCEA?
So lately has been all things college chapters. I've been everywhere to Coastal Carolina, Winthrop, U of FC, SC, and anywhere in between, Clemson. And we've been doing a lot of work building those chapters up and really empowering and really supporting our aspiring educators and really just doing some intentional work with that and to really make sure that they are prepared, they have a community and a support system in place in order for them to be successful as they enter into their career as an educator.
That's such important work, Albert. Thank you for what you do. Our guest today is Amanda Santamaria. She is the Director of Nursing for Dorchester School District 2 in Summerville, South Carolina. She's a board-certified registered nurse with a graduate level certification in school nursing. She has a background in emergency medicine, telemetry nursing, and worked as an elementary school nurse before transitioning to her current role. And she is also serving as the president of the South Carolina Association of School Nurses. So without further ado, welcome Amanda to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll start off, Amanda, with this question. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I knew there were school nurses in, all across the state of South Carolina. I hadn't heard of the South Carolina Association of School Nurses. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization?
Sure. So we are a professional organization made up of roughly about 300 members currently. It is open to any current or former school nurse in the state. And we really strive to create a community where school nurses can network with one another, share resources and kind of go to one another. It's kind of a very niche community. There's not that many school nurses out there. It's a unique aspect of the nursing field. So just to kind of create a community where they can go to one another and share resources, and that's about it.
Perfect. So when we talk about the scope of work of a school nurse, so I taught fourth grade for 6 years here in the Midlands, and I taught elementary school. So the school nurse did everything from the allergy medicine to, hey, can you go down there and get us some Band-Aids? So that is always a fun job. And I love our school nurse. Shout out to Nurse Bobby at H.E. Corley Elementary. But when we think about the role of a school nurse in our schools, can you kind of speak to that and kind of what their work looks like? Because I know that they do a whole lot. And so putting that into perspective would be great.
Sure. So we always kind of say school nursing is not just ice lace and Band-Aids. Lots of times people think of school nurses as, handing out an ice pack, a cup of pretzels for tummy aches and boo-boos, but it really is so much more than that. And it has evolved into so much more than that, especially recently. School nurses, as you mentioned, deal with allergies, asthma, lots of different medical concerns that might not impact students or staff on a day-to-day basis, but that they have to be mindful of. They do a lot of staff training in those areas, as well as other things like first aid, CPR. They also obviously provide routine medical care to students. So that is a wide range of everything from those ice packs and Band-Aids to daily medicine that they take. And they also do a lot of, health coaching, providing students with nutrition information, resources for healthy and active lifestyles. They do a lot of I won't say counseling, but they are definitely a shoulder to lean on for students. We have many students at all levels who rely on their school nurse, just kind of as somebody that they're familiar with, somebody they're comfortable with, somebody they can go to and talk to. And they really just provide lots of valuable resources for the school communities that they work in.
We met a couple of your colleagues about 5 or 6 weeks ago at a press conference that we were doing in Columbia, talking about masking and vaccines and sort of COVID protocols. I'm sure this goes without saying that that for school nurses, the past couple of years have just been introduced all kinds of new challenges on your day-to-day basis in terms of your job. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like? Like, what is what is the life of a school nurse? How has it changed since the pandemic started? And what are the major challenges that you've faced? Also, what are the ways that sort of folks who are in the community, who are in the school, whether it's fellow educators or parents, how they can sort of help you as you navigate those waters?
Sure. So as you mentioned, it has absolutely changed. The role of the school nurse has shifted completely. It's everything that we just talked about, plus so much more. And I think that's occurred in a lot of different areas in the education system. People are taking on, double and triple work compared to what they used to be doing. So for nurses, that really kind of looks like, the day-to-day ins and outs of COVID, and that parent reporting, staff member reporting, following up on cases, following up on exposure. So that's just kind of an added daily piece of their workload, but it's also being that health resource for their school and their district communities. So, school nurses used to kind of just exist in their own bubble, and they were only really needed when they were needed. Our whole education system, the landscape has shifted to be very health focused because of the pandemic. So nurses have been relied on to not only provide parent support, community support, and give them information about COVID-19, about hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, all those types of things, but also really have become a resource within their districts for their administrators, their fellow staff members who are unsure about what the next step should be, are not sure what mitigation strategies their district should put into place. And so they've really kind of been pushed to the forefront of being part of task forces and reopening committees, and being relied on very heavily for that expertise, which is kind of, I will say, a silver lining of this whole thing, because previously school nurses were not always asked for feedback or for their opinion, or really necessarily had a seat at the table. And this has kind of given them that voice and that opportunity to really be a contributing member to their districts, and be more than just, again, that first aid and tummy aches and things like that. It's really shown how important they are and what their role is.
So I have a deep respect for the medical community. It's something that my family, is kind of our history, from nurses to secretaries to working in a nursing home. It's something that my family for years have done. And so I think about that, and I put that in the frame of the teacher retention issue that we have. And we know that that is an issue across South Carolina. And a lot of times you're running into issues where there aren't certified educators to go into classrooms. How does that then translate to the school nurse role? How does that affect that? I've heard from some school nurses in conversation that they're like, I might as well go back to the ER. And so I've heard that be a conversation. So how has that retention and recruitment been an issue from a school nurse when already there isn't a school nurse in every school to begin with?
Right. It's been very challenging. With the pandemic, lots of different types of nursing opportunities have become available, not only in hospital and nursing home settings where those jobs always existed, but they might not have been favorable. Those jobs are now there. They pay twice as much as they used to. The hours are consistent because there's always a need. And there's also other opportunities. Companies are hiring nurses to be sort of occupational health nurses for their staff, and vaccination nurses, and just kind of COVID-19 case managers. And so we're losing nurses not only to the stress of the job currently, just like teachers are leaving the profession and saying, I can't do this is too much for me. But we're also losing them to other jobs, because they're saying, why would I stay here in a role where I used to think it was kind of great, the quality of life wasn't so bad. Now I'm working twice as hard and making half as much as I could somewhere else. So it's definitely been challenging. And that's why we, as an organization, really try to work hard to support one another, because we know that those other opportunities are out there, and we don't want to lose good people. We want to keep them in the field, because hopefully one day this will be over, and we want to grow from it and not lose our people.
We talk a lot about when I write the blog and in previous podcasts, we talk about sort of the ecosystem that educators find themselves in, some of the frustrations, and Albert's talked about the recruitment and retention issues that present for nurses in particular. What are what would you identify as maybe the top 2 or 3 challenges or frustrations that you're facing that sort of pose a recruitment into the profession or a retention issue for school nurses in particular?
Sure. I think pay is definitely one. Nurses in general, just like teachers, just like, other fields of service, don't necessarily go into the field because they're hoping to become millionaires, but it's difficult to justify, that when you need to support your family and make ends meet, that you're making, again, half as much as you would in another role. So as much as the quality of life, the hours, summers off might be desirable to some and work for some families, the huge pay cut that nurses take when they come into the field of school nursing is definitely a challenge that we see. I would say also the workload, even pre-COVID, as Albert said, we have many nurses in the state, or many schools, excuse me, that don't have a nurse. And so what you see often is that nurses are hired to cover multiple schools, cover an entire district, cover multiple buildings. And sometimes that can be not only, taxing on a person, but it can also make them feel unsafe. And so nurses, rely heavily on their ability to feel comfortable with the work they're doing because they are licensed. And so a lot of times it becomes a struggle with what's safe for me to do during my practice and what I think is feasible within the role. So we do lose a lot of nurses, and that's why we really strongly encourage, especially with all of the funding that's come out and Superintendent Spearman's, reinforcement that really every school should have a nurse if they could. We want to try to just get good nurses into the field and know that they're supported, they're paid well, and that they don't have to cover multiple buildings, making an unsafe situation.
So I kind of want to shift some of our thinking and conversation around some of the advocacy, the education policy, and that legislative piece. What would you say to legislators and people and school board members and people who make decisions about education, specifically in reference to health, without bringing school nurses and those professionals and healthcare professionals to the field when they're having those conversations? What would you say to them?
So I think that it's really important to focus. I know the conversation, especially now, is very heavily on, learning loss, what our students have lost recently as a result of COVID-19, as a result of virtual learning and what happened last spring and the spring before. And what we really try to impress upon when we are asked, when we are given that opportunity, is that having a school nurse in every school, having quality school nurses in the field, helps children learn. And it might not seem like that's the most important thing. We're looking at test scores, we're looking at that instructional piece. Are they on pace with curriculum guides? But students need access to medical screenings. We need to know that they can hear and that they can see. And if they're in school and they haven't had a doctor's visit for a year because of the pandemic, or no one's checked their eyesight, no one's looked at their teeth to see, hey, are they experiencing chronic pain relative to lack of dental care? Things like that, we want to make sure that our legislators and those decision makers understand that it's not, again, ice, slice, and Band-Aids. Our nurses do so much more to keep students in school, and that ultimately impacts their education and allows them to learn, because that's our motto: healthy children learn better. And when they are in school and they are healthy, that is when they're most capable of learning. So we try to just have those conversations so that they understand the validity of what we do and the importance of it, so that they realize the impact it has on instruction.
I know there have been areas of the country where the school has also been looked at as sort of a community medical facility where they brought in dentists and physicians, whether it be after school or on weekends, where folks can bring their kids in and get those types of screenings. So it's not that everything's falling on the school nurse, who, like you said, might be working multiple schools. What are your thoughts on that sort of model, if we could get the funding for it, that kind of model of using schools? I mean, because think about it, the schools are already built, and if we're only using them for 8 or 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, you've got all that other time when they could be used for therapy, for vision screening, dental screening, all of that stuff. What are your thoughts about that?
Definitely, we encourage it. We see that there are a lot of companies and partners out there who are willing to offer those services, to come on site and do medical screenings, dental screenings, offer telehealth visits for students who don't have a medical home. We have a lot of partners in our community here in Somerville and in Dorchester County, and I know that they exist all across the state, who are willing and able to come out to schools and be a resource for our students in that area. So we definitely encourage it. And we, want to make sure our members, as well as, lawmakers, know that, again, that is a function of school nursing and of schools, is that we really are an extension of home and an extension of the community, and we can offer those services as they're available to us, because that, again, helps students and helps keep them healthy and in school.
Perfect. One of the things that I just want to give you the opportunity to speak to, we're having this conversation, we're talking about school nurses, we're talking about their importance and their relevance, and really just the necessity of having them in schools and really supporting them. What would you just say if on a hot mic on this podcast, what would you say is this is an opportunity to just share your thoughts about school nursing, some final kind of wrap up things that you would like to share on that topic?
Sure. So I would speak to my school nurses out there and let them know that they are supported and heard, and we're here for them. I would speak to our education leaders out there and let them know that they should continue to go to their school nurses, utilize them, rely on them heavily. They are a wealth of knowledge. They are all licensed and trained, and can be a great resource for schools, for administrators, for school boards. I'm very fortunate that I am able to have those conversations in my position in DD2, but some of our nurses don't have that opportunity, and they don't have a seat at the table. And so we would encourage districts to really use them. And then I would encourage the community, parents, teachers, colleagues to just, again, recognize the importance of the work that your school nurse is doing, thank them, and go to them. If you ever are in need of a community resource, you need health advice, your school nurses are, again, a valuable resource for you within your communities and your schools.
Amanda, thanks so much for your time today, and thanks so much for what let the school nurses know that everybody at the SCEA is so thankful and appreciative of what what they do and what they continue to do, and particularly these last 2 years I know have had to have been incredibly stressful for school nurses, and our hearts are with you, and we support you, and we'll continue to advocate for you and your profession. Albert, do you have any closing thoughts?
Sure. So at the SCEA, we consider school nurses a part of a family known as ESPs, Education Support Professionals. Those are everyone that has such a even larger impact, I would say, than some educators, from the time you walk into the school building to the time that you leave. And so we do welcome our school nurses to be a part of the SCEA, to belong to the SCEA. And so there is a space in place for you to bring your voice to the table and for you to advocate, and really make sure that your voice is heard so that our South Carolina students can get the public schooling that they deserve.
And if you're interested in joining, you can go to jointhescea.org. That's jointhescea.org. I also invite you to check out our website, thescea.org/movement, to learn more about our movement. And once again, thank you, Amanda, for your time today. And thanks so much to all of our school nurses.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.